Hello and welcome to RAF Brize Norton and the JAR Design A330. So what I'm going to do today is to take this sim on a quick circuit at RAF Brize Norton. We'll just throw it around the sky a bit and take a quick look. This is a taster for some upcoming videos that I have devoted to this aircraft and to X-Plane 10. So as you can see, I've started up the aircraft, positioned at the beginning of runway 8, ready for takeoff. All I've done at this stage is to click the hot start button, which effectively puts the aircraft into a state where we're just about ready for takeoff. Clearly there are a few things that I'll want to do prior to taking off, and I'm just going to walk through some of those. There are no checklists or flows that are delivered with this sim when you buy it, so you either have to go and get the FCOMs, the flight crew operating manuals, or you have to try and find somewhere on the internet to pull the information together, or I guess in good flight sim parlance, you just wing it. Well, let's see how we do and how we get on. I have had a few goes at doing this, so hopefully by now I'm starting to get settled in and get used to it. Having said that, that's absolutely set me off to make a number of cataclysmic fails, hasn't it? Anyway, let's get going. First of all, I want to take a look at the lights and get those set. So strobe on, beacon on, nav lights on, nose lights on, runway turn off on, and the landing lights on. Seat belts, no smoking signs on auto, that's fine. I'll arm the emergency exit lights. While I'm up here, I'm just going to put the air conditioning for the cockpit and the cabin to around the 12 o'clock mark. If I don't, the sim will barf at me at various stages with people complaining that they're too hot or too cold. That's the only reason I do it, rather than being particularly detailed about the way that I operate the sim. Okay, let's have a quick look at the MCDU. I'm going to enter in a rudimentary flight plan here. The ICAO code for RAF Brize Norton is Echo Golf Victor November. So I'll pop that in for the departure and arrival airport. And of course align the IRS. I'm not too worried about cost index or cruising flight levels or anything like that. Here of course I'm just going to do a circuit of the airfield. Go onto the performance page and I'll enter in the V1, the rotate and the V2 numbers, thrust reduction, engine out, and the flap settings. With those done, I'll make sure that I've got the ILS tuned in. That's the correct frequency for runway 08 at Brize Norton, and the course for coming in is actually 74 degrees, but for some reason once I flew it once, the JAR Design's A330 saw fit to put it at 73 degrees, and I've flown it a few times on 73. It seems to work fine, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
Completed.
Okay, let's have a look at the flight control unit. I'm going to set the altitude for the circuit to 3,500 feet. Auto brake to max as I'm here. Check the fuel quantity. I've got 16 tons. That's more than enough for a quick circuit, which will probably consume about 2 tons, I imagine. With the engine started, I can turn the APU and the bleed off. I'll select flaps 1. Now setting flaps can't be done via the virtual cockpit as far as I can tell, so I activate that via a switch on my joystick.
Flaps 1.
Arming the spoilers can be done via the virtual cockpit. I'll do that there.
Arm.
And just before I do the parking brake and so on, I'm going to change the light settings here. I don't want to have floodlights or integrated lights on. They're useful if we're flying at night. It's the middle of the day here. We don't need those. I'll take the parking brake off. after I've set the engine start to
Park
normal,
brake off.
and we're in good shape, ready to go. Okay, I've got real weather in use here, and I'm also using SkyMax Pro version 2 for the clouds. I'm going to set real terra haze to a less pronounced setting for the lighting. Okay, everything's looking good. Now, if like me, you use the runway follows contours setting for X-Plane 10, you'll want to be well aware of this next tip if you're not already, which is, as you're moving down the runway, keep the stick pushed forward to keep the nose settled on the ground. Otherwise you'll get some rather strange floating sensations and sound changes as the front tyre apparently lifts clear of the ground. Okay, so with all that done, there's just a couple of other lights I'm going to turn off as I'm here. Alright, we are good to go. Let's move the throttle smoothly forward. Check everything's running up nicely, which it is. So forward to full Mantoga, stick half forward,
Power set.
and we're good. Ready on the pedals, which are very sensitive, I find, for this sim. You've got to be careful not to overcook it, and that's very easy to do.
$100 knots. V1, rotate.
Gently back on the stick, and then follow the flight director.
Positive
Go.
climb. Gear up.
Up with the gear. We need to be quite careful here. There's a very thin line between getting the climb right and stalling, as you can see here. So leave it to climb. Predicts that the nose is going to need to come down to maintain the speed. Follow the flight director again. And that's looking good. I'm going to engage the autopilot now.
Autopilot 1, cross-check.
As you can see, some of these buttons are very close together. It's easy to
Standard barrel
activate
cross-check.
the wrong one.
Passing flight level 022.
Okay, I'm waiting for the SB to come up now on the speed strip, and I'll
After takeoff checklist.
retract the flaps.
Flaps 0.
I'm just going to change the light settings here, because if I don't, the first officer will bark at me that there's something wrong with the lights. Without telling you what it is, incidentally, you've got to try and guess and figure it out. Okay, we're moving along nicely then. The fuel consumption you can see here is almost 8 tons per hour per engine. Phenomenal and prodigious fuel consumption rate here. Okay, I'm looking for 250 knots, 3,500 feet, and then I'll start our turn onto the crosswind leg. We'll get a chime that announces that we're just about there. There we go. I'm going to turn to the right now, moving gently to the right so we start that turn. And being very careful not to overcook it, because otherwise the aircraft will turn around and take the shortest distance for the direction we've indicated we want to go. Okay, 254 degrees. View on the ground outside is a combination of things which I've brought together for my X-Plane environment. This is a mix of the zoom level 16 images producible through G2 XPL and some improved road images as well. You'll find out how to do these, if you'd like to do it for yourselves, in the series of videos that I have on improving the look of X-Plane 10 for free. So we're looking outside the aircraft. as we're moving around here in the circuit. Bit of stuttering as the graphic environment catches up with itself. Lovely looking aircraft, the A330, very sleek, belying the fact really that it's a wide-bodied jet. The Royal Air Force livery you see here is not provided out of the box with the A330, but it is a freely available download. One of the great things about the X-Plane community, there are so many good people who devote their time and effort to the hobby free of charge, and this livery is just one example of precisely that. Okay, everything's looking good. Let's have a look at some passenger views. These are views that I've added in myself using X-Camera 2. Let's have a look at the starboard wing view of the flaps and the countryside beyond. RAF Brize Norton is located in Oxfordshire in the UK. Beautiful part of the country, and there's an awful lot of rather well-known airfields dotted around it as well, the closest of which is RAF Fairford, which was used by the United States Air Force for a very long time. Currently I think still the venue for the Royal International Air Tattoo. Also near here, Kidlington Airport in Oxford, and RAF Lynham, closed now, which used to be the repatriation centre for military services returning to the UK. Okay, let's hop back to the cockpit. So as you know, I've got the ILS dialed in for runway 08 at Brize Norton, and that'll be being tracked now. In fact, if I switch the display over to the landing system, you can see that the ILS is at about our 4 o'clock position. So we're heading away from the airfield now. In fact, just going under the nose there on the right, where I'm circling the mouse, that is Fairford. We're back to where we are then. The airport is Brize Norton, that is, at about 4:30 position. And looking at the DME here, we're currently just over 6 miles away from it. I'm going to wait until we're about 13 miles away before I turn inbound, try to intercept the localizer on a 30-degree intercept course, and set us up for the landing. As I said at the outset of the video, I'm using SkyMax Pro version 2 here. You can see the clouds. You can also perhaps see the shadow on the ground, and these are the shadows caused obviously by those clouds. Lots of water parks around this area. I think this is the Cotswold Water Park that we're coming up to here. Nice area if you're interested in boating, yachting, windsurfing, those kinds of things. Makes for a nice view out of the window for flight simulation as well. Okay, we've got 11 miles to run. I'm going to do a little bit of prep here. I'm going to turn on the landing system. Really, there's not a great deal to do until we start the turn to come into land. and still retard the turn. Where do I get this stuff from? Okay, 13 miles showing. Time to make the turn now. I'm going to turn right to 44 degrees, which will give us a 30-degree intercept with the localizer. I'll activate the approach phase.
Approach phase activated.
Just check the QNH here on the ACARS, and it's 1009. Not absolutely required this, of course, but does make good sense. Winds 230, 10 knots, 230, 10 knots. Of course, I could have done this on the crosswind instead of playing the tourist, but this is just a quick and dirty flight of 4 circuit into land. Not a tutorial or training flight or anything pompous like that. I'm waiting for the localizer diamond to move here now. Once it does, I'll activate the approach phase. Just passing under the nose there, by the way, you could see RAF Fairford again. That appears on the charts for Brize Norton, reminding pilots not to get the two confused. They both have extremely large runways. I can only imagine the embarrassment of a pilot who lands at one instead of the other. There's the diamond moving now. The green dot speed set, I'm going to lower flaps 1 as well. And in turn will slow us down to the S setting, about 165 knots. And there ahead you can see the runway at Brize Norton. Next event will be 2,000 feet on the Radalt when I'll lower flaps 2 and the gear.
2,500.
Radio altimeter alive.
So you can see the Radalt reading here, based on radar returns from the ground, I believe, as opposed to the altitude shown here based on the barometric pressure. Okay, 2,000 feet's quickly approaching, so I'm going to give us an external view and take a look at the undercarriage. I'll lower the next stage of flap
Flaps 2.
and the gear.
Check, sir. If everything is okay with the light.
Gear down.
As I mentioned earlier, the first officer is very quick to bark if he thinks the lights are not in the right settings at any stage of flight. This seems to conflict with the FCOM, by the way. The first officer is wanting some lights to come on, which ordinarily you wouldn't set until you had set full flaps. The two in particular he's on about here are the runway turn-off and the nose light. So flaps 2 and the gear down. I'm waiting for 1,000 feet now before I'll apply the next stage of flaps. There's 1,000 feet on the Radalt. No particular need for that, it's just the way I prefer to do it.
Flaps 3.
And I'll lower the final stage of flaps at about 600 feet. Just applied the auto brakes there to the medium setting. I'll arm the spoilers as well. They're already armed in fact, so no problem there. Final stage of flaps now. And we're ready to come into land. I'm going to let it auto land. I'll apply both autopilots.
500.
I'll just wait until we get the 50 feet call,
400.
where I'll retard the
Land
throttle
green checked.
and I'll apply the reverse thrust.
300.
Try and bring us to a nice steady halt on the runway.
Minimum.
Decision is to land.
100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10. 5.
Ground spoilers. Decel. Reverse green.
As you can see, that's still a very long landing. And also, as you can see, the
70 knots.
rudder pedal is extraordinarily sensitive. There seems to be some weird disconnects between retarding the throttle and the brake. As you can see there, the parking brake's in an indeterminate position between on and off.
Park brake off.
It's on now. Now it's off. Okay, with that done, I can try and get us off the runway. I'd prefer to carry the energy forward, of course, and taxi off appropriately, but at the moment I haven't found out why the parking brake applies itself as strangely as it does. Okay, rather than taxi all the way to the hard standings here, I'll just bring us to a stop on this taxiway and say thank you very much for watching. I hope that's been fun, and to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already, or to like or share the video, and also of course to remind you that I have an upcoming series on the A330 and a full-scale review as well. As ever, thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you the next time.